We have very enthusiastic teachers in Maryland, extremely gifted teachers. Thank you.
So good afternoon, everyone, and in the interest of time, I acknowledge all of our previous speakers and participants, and I'm delighted to be here. I'll try to move very quickly through my comments, but I always value these opportunities to be intellectually stimulated, to listen and learn as much as to share some of the things that we at the National Science Foundation are enabling. And bottom line, the answer, Dr. Augustine, I would agree that the idea is to teach every chicken how to lay golden eggs. We at the National Science Foundation and elsewhere very much appreciate the seminal role that Regent Augustine and the Rising Above the Gathering Storm Committee did in galvanizing, and it has been quite a galvanizer of legislative and executive governmental actions to ensure American competitiveness, but also to increase the quality of life for all Americans. Even if we only got to the authorization level, it's still quite important. In his remarks, Dr. Augustine spoke of a prime driver in this new knowledge economy being the education of the populace, and especially of a cadre of individuals who can propel innovation in science and engineering. He's identified then two elements of great importance to the well-being of the nation as a whole, and certainly to us at the National Science Foundation: the education of the populace and a cadre of individuals who can propel innovation in science and engineering. But then come some fairly complex questions. How do we make those happen? What does it take? While we certainly don't have all the answers to address the important challenges posed by Dr. Augustine, there are some good reasons to take heart, we believe, from the work that's being done by many of you here and by your and our colleagues across the nation. Public institutions of higher education in Maryland have always been quite successful in receiving support from us at the National Science Foundation Directorate for Education and Human Resources. At the current time, Maryland's public colleges and universities already are garnering $88 million in active awards through merit review. Nancy Shapiro and her colleagues at the University System of Maryland, for example, with support from Britt Kerwin and with NSF support for their math and science partnership, are showing us that higher education has a very critical role, not only in the development of a STEM workforce with individuals capable of propelling innovation and taking it to scale, but also in the pivotal role in extending the influence of higher education into K-12. Many of the key recommendations in major national reports recently and other studies on STEM education, especially in the K-12 realm, have drawn on important efforts of the 1990s, often supported, we're pleased, during their developmental phases by the National Science Foundation. These include the initial funding for the You Teach model that Uri spoke to us about this morning, for teacher education as a means of tremendously increasing the number of high-quality STEM teachers in our nation's classroom, and increasing access, student access to, per the conversation this morning, access to and success in advanced placement courses so that it becomes more of a gateway rather than a gatekeeper, and so that it fosters higher expectations, as Secretary Duncan spoke about this morning. So this is where we in EHR seek to play a pivotal role in encouraging and supporting all of you to champion effective innovations in education toward the goal of enabling excellence in U.S. STEM education at all levels and in all settings in order to support the development of a diverse and well-prepared workforce of scientists, technicians, engineers, mathematicians, and educators, while also increasing the STEM literacy of the broader population. EH funding opportunities in support of such innovations span every unit within our directorate. Although we would probably all agree that what goes on in K-12 impacts higher education and the workforce through the quality of the students that emerge, we may not always think so much about the ways that higher education can impact K-12. Said another way, we may not always harness harness very well the potential synergies between higher ed and K-12. Some obvious synergies between the two revolve around courses. We mentioned advanced placement, international baccalaureate, where both K-12 and higher ed have common interests, as well as around college entrance requirements. But I think there may be some more important domains where higher ed can leverage its influence more strategically. And so I pose a few questions for your consideration. How seriously does higher ed take its teaching mission? To what extent are faculty willing to reflect on their own teaching and respect the scholarship of teaching? To what extent do STEM departments create a culture for teaching and learning that smooths the critical transitions, educational transitions, at all levels for their students? How seriously does higher ed take into account the need for appropriate student mentoring, especially in the STEM fields, which are often perceived as more rigorous and difficult, and especially for students who do not come from families where a college education is part of family tradition? To what extent are institutions of higher education themselves models of innovation ecosystems that Mr. Augustine spoke of earlier? Are we practicing what we preach and what we know is needed? If we believe that words matter, are we really using higher education and its tremendous bully pulpit to affect the K-20 STEM educational system and to create our own campuses, on our own campuses the ecosystems for innovation that we want? And quite relevant to a question that we heard posed earlier and addressed momentarily ago, how do we provide more time for teachers to follow their passion to teach all of our children to learn? And so we need more ideas. We do need creative ideas, innovative ideas, even transformative ideas, those that vastly challenge current paradigms in anticipation of effective ways of teaching and learning during this very rapidly changing 21st century. We in the Directorate for Education and Human Resources, again, appreciate the opportunity to engage in this discussion with you and to continue to partner with you in this important work. I'd also call to your attention just a few examples of the new directions in which we're moving.